how do you see sort of the global war machine as it relates to what for lack of a better word, would call a collective conscience or consciousness that wants to live in a different way?
I mean, I think the biggest problem with parti- in, par- in particular with people in the United States is complacency. I think that we have just, as a nation, as the population of the nation of the United States, have become completely complacent. So I think there's lots of people out there who don't want the war machine, who don't want the violence and all of the negative things they're seeing happening, but they're too complacent to do anything about it. They just want to check out. They just want to scroll through Instagram. They just want to go have a drink with their friends. They don't want to think about it. And it's a shame because nothing will change that way. In fact, things will change not the way that they want it to. And that's the route we're going down right now. And I think people just need to wake up and learn how to, I mean, to live life properly, you have to make an effort. You cannot coast through life, right? Life is full of change. Life is full of learning. You have to learn the skills of civil discourse. You have to learn how to get along with people who don't have the same opinions. You have to learn how to influence other people to try to get them to see your perspective.
And that's the game. That's the game
Yeah.
that Jihi was saying. It's a dirty, treacherous, tricky game, but it's a game. Whether you want to influence your kids to brush their teeth, or whether you want to influence your in-laws to vote for a different candidate, you have to understand there's a recipe for influence, and there's a process for influence, and you might feel sticky in the process, but if it gets you the outcome that you're trying to achieve,
Right.
is it really dirty at all?
Influence doesn't equal bad, right? Like if you influence your children to brush their teeth, that's not bad.
I think it's oppressive.
My daughter would say so too.
So practical takeaways for people who don't want to check out but don't know where to start. What are some ways that they can learn the subtle art of influence or the not so subtle art?
So I think the first thing that people can work on is just dialogue. There's so much done with these short messages over Instagram or Facebook or texting. People don't actually have conversations anymore. So more in-person conversations. Pick a topic, discuss. Use
Disagree.
Use your phone to look up facts instead of scrolling through your Facebook while you're sitting with your friends. I mean, I think step number one is practice dialogue in person with another human being.
A big part of the reason Jihi and I created the business that we run is because these skills didn't exist. There's no place to go to learn dialogue. I would argue the vast majority of people don't even know the definition of dialogue, how it's different than a conversation, how it's different than an explanation, right? Because dialogue is the exchange of ideas. So you can't just sit there and be spoken to and call that a dialogue, even though that's what many, college professors tend to think they're doing, is we're going to have a dialogue here today, folks. No, you're going to talk to a classroom of 150 people and they're not going to talk back, and maybe you'll get 5 questions about what you're saying, not an exchange of new ideas. And dialogue is very powerful because in a proper dialogue creates a sense of relationship between two people. When I hear your position on something and you hear my position on something, even if we disagree, we both feel heard. That triggers a sense of connection in our brain. That triggers the opening for persuasion and influence. You can't persuade or influence people without that opening. The way that we see all this mass propaganda take over, like you talk about, and the way that we see this mass influence take hold is because people are pulling on emotional triggers, which is why you create these echo chambers of the far left and the far right. You already know what words will trigger emotions, and then you can just feed in whatever you want to feed in next once you have that person triggered.
Well, and I think that also sort of leads to, your social media is not where you should be getting news.
Right.
No.
And the amount of people who do it is phenomenal.
Well, I mean, look, I
Astounding.
have teenagers, so I kind of dismissed it as like, oh, well, when I was that age, I mean, look, I was reading the newspaper. I was learning to read the newspaper, and like that was a thing that I wouldn't, necessarily encourage my kids to do. But I think, like, what if you did not listen to the news that was on social media? Because also, and there's some really fascinating studies about this, the proportion of perspectives that are reflected on social media is often driven by bots. It's often driven by countries like Qatar. So, what you're actually seeing is not even a proportional representation of even what most people are thinking about or needing to learn about. So I love this notion of also like give up
Yeah.
the notion of getting news from social media and some of those legacy media places that you used to rely on.
Yeah.
Guess what? They're not impartial. And if you want to read what your perspective is, great, go those places. But if you want to read what an actual kind of reflection of perspectives is, you do have to seek out, like you said, places like AP News, places that are kind of reporting from a more old school news reporting place. We spoke to Connie Chung here, and I remember that was one of our questions. And she was saying that, like, even during Watergate, it didn't matter if you were a Republican or if you were a Democrat. You saw what was happening, and this is not okay. We do not tap phone, like all those things. But it was so interesting because now it feels like I don't even know how reporters are supposed to report because of the larger, so I think that's also an important kind of practical tip.
Yeah, and reading more than one news source. I would never advocate for somebody to just rely on one news source. You have to have multiple. So if you want the New York Times, fine, but also read Reuters or AP News. And then also, I would even suggest read something that's a conservative news source.
You can be uncomfortable
Yeah.
without it being triggering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can be mad without it being PTSD, right?
Yes.
Like, what does it feel like to learn to tolerate? And look, I reached a certain point where it's like, I do not need to talk to people about X, Y, or Z. So like we all
Yeah.
have those points. But generally speaking, if you're learning about the economy, if you're learning about what's
Yeah.
going on in government, you get to learn how to tolerate being uncomfortable and
Mhm.
saying, they have their reasons, but I'm not just going to siphon it off and be like, I'm blocking you from my feed.
I mean, even on this podcast, it's interesting. We get comments of listeners who are like, "I don't agree with every guest." Great.
Yeah.
Don't agree with every guest.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you should listen to every episode necessarily.
I don't agree with Jonathan most of the time, and here we are.
But I think it's important to be able to hear at least part of someone's perspective and not just be like, "No, you're wrong." That only divides us. We don't get anywhere in that.
You don't grow.
Yes.
And that's the thing that Jihi and I mean, I'm less worried about division and more worried about growth, because I had a very wise CIA friend who once told me, if you're not growing, you're dying. And I didn't understand that at the time, but I understand it much better as I get older. Because when you stop growing, when you become complacent, when you just coast, I mean,
Or don't take in any new ideas and
getting
just
closer
say,
to
this
death.
is my perspective. I mean, that's very hard because, everyone's also talks about that in science. They're like, this is the science, but science is constantly changing and
Yeah.
evolving
Exactly.
and learning new things.
Correct.
Yes. So same thing with dialogue. If you can't take in other people's perspectives and understand where other people are coming from, how can you have any new ideas about how to get better?
How does that relate, though, to people who may be like so far on a spectrum as to be somewhat radical, or like people who are like,
CIA believes that all people are born with a spy secret superpower. For some people, that means they can win deals. For others, they can spot liars. Some can even seduce lovers. I built a free 3-minute test to help reveal to you exactly what your secret hidden superpower is. All you have to do is click on the link in the description below, take the test, and start using your spy superpower to stay ahead of 99% of people.
they are drinking the blood of children. Like, where does it end?
That becomes a personal question about what the level of effort is that you want to put into it.
Yeah.
And if it was my child that was drinking the blood of children, I would have a lot more like effort that I'd be willing to put into it.
Because you'd want to connect. You don't
Correct.
want to sever the connection.
But what it is I mean, there are people that you just have to. We kind of, again, I'm the very pragmatic one. There are either productive or destructive relationships that you're in at any given time. And you want to continue to contribute to productive relationships because they are productive. Productive to who? Productive to you. But then there are also destructive relationships. And every ounce of effort that you put into a destructive relationship is destructive to who? To you. So if you could take back your resources from all the destructive relationships and put them into the productive relationships, where would you go? Stop being obligated to your mom. Stop answering the phone when your sister's calling to complain. Stop worrying about your old college friend who has no hope. Like, stop dealing with these people. You're only dealing with them because you feel like you have to. You're a bad person if you ignore them. That's not how I was trained to see it at all. How I was trained to see it is you have a certain number of gold coins in your purse, And for every gold coin you put into a destructive relationship, you lose the return on investment if you
Oh
would have put it into
my,
productive.
therapy with Andy. Now he sounds like all the mystics, right? He sounds like every transcendental psilocybin tripper we've had. Like, don't give away your energy, man. Like, keep it for yourself.
You have to prioritize yourself.
Correct.
He has the hair of a mystic. He should be able to speak like one.
One day.
I mean, what's interesting is that I think a lot of men speak like this, and we know that from therapists and female therapists, they also speak like this. But what we've heard and Mayim talks about is that women are conditioned sometimes to not have that perspective, to be much more accommodating, to give up their own wants and desires, to be supportive.
I don't know if it's that a lot of men say that. I think a lot of men, in many cases, and you can tell me if you disagree, a lot of men have the liberty to be able to, I don't want to say abdicate, but to be able to delegate emotional labor to women, because we tend to culturally be expected to do that, especially if you come from a traditional or patriarchal society or culture or religion. It's really, kind of built in. So yeah, we're the ones who get the autoimmune disorders. We're the ones, who are kind of like bearing the brunt of a lot of that. And yeah.
Well, Jihid, do you share his gold coin, limiting your gold coin expenditure model?
I had to learn that because I was raised in a patriarchal household where the women took on everything. And you were expected to hold space for everybody, where Andy can just literally walk away from a conversation and nobody says anything. I mean, whether anybody would have said anything or not, I would have felt guilty about it because of the way I was raised. So over time, I was in a bad relationship. And it was after that I learned you cannot change everybody. That maybe there's a person that can change another person, but that's not necessarily you, and you can walk away. And so it took me 7 years and a lot of debt and an anxiety disorder to learn that you only have a certain number of coins and you need to invest those wisely.
And now nobody gets Jihi's coins. It's hilarious because she just avoids everybody, even the people she really, really loves. She's like, I just don't want to spend that coin now.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about the process to get there. You mentioned an anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
Tell us about the process.
Yeah, so I was I was diagnosed with anxiety disorder like the second week I was at the CIA.
This is actually a phenomenal story.
Yeah.
She was a copious vomiter.
Yes, it was terrible.
No connection to
Was nervous to eat on their first date
Yeah.
because she
Yes.
might have thrown up all over him.
from anxiety.
Yes, from anxiety. Like our first kiss, he was like, "You're not gonna throw up on me, are you?"
How else do you know you really like someone?
Exactly.
Okay, well, hold on one second.
Yes.
You're going into a job
Yes.
that requires an enormous level of stress, secrets, and they didn't sort of say maybe this isn't constitutionally appropriate for you?
So none of us knew because I was, other than my physical symptoms, I was handling it well. So it was very functional.
Also, this was a while ago. People weren't
Yes.
so into talking
Oh,
about these
yes.
things.
Oh, yeah.
No. And even with all the psychological batteries that they give you, and I talked to a psychologist and all of that, like none of it came up because I didn't know I had it. So I'd ended my relationship, and 6 months after the end of that relationship, I was sick, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I just knew like I was having trouble keeping food down. So I had all these tests done. Nothing came up. So I started my new job. And then it was when Andy asked me out on a date, and he called to pick me up. And I was like, I can't go. And he was like, oh, we could just get coffee. I was like, I can't. And then I went and threw up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have an anxiety disorder. So I diagnosed myself. I go to my doctor, and they're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So then I went to the agency because I ended up in the ER because I couldn't hold food down.
Okay.
I just wasn't,
So couldn't eat at all.
couldn't eat, couldn't drink. I just was throwing up all the time.
Andy's love makes people want to
I
die.
It
I'll
was
just
really
waste
hard.
away to nothing because of his love.
Yes.
It was really hard at the time for me too. I was
I know,
like, this is a bad sign.
I know, poor guy.
It's a bad sign.
But, I missed a few days of work and I didn't have a phone number to call. And so I was like, well, security's going to find me no matter what. Like, you can't just disappear from the CIA. So finally, the HR lady calls me and I tell her, and I think I'm done. I'm like, just like you said, there's no way CIA is going to keep me on with an anxiety disorder. And immediately they were like, you can see our in-house psychologist. She'll hook you up with an outside therapist who's cleared, who knows where you work, and we'll put you on an easy assignment. We'll make space for you to go to your therapy appointments twice a week. And I was like,
I mean, they
oh,
trained
like
you, so they
amazing.
don't want to lose you because they
Yes.
put all this money and time into getting you there.
Exactly.
And
I don't know, people. That makes me nervous, though.
when they see,
Because then you're being sent to places all over the world
So-
in life-threatening situations.
Every time I went overseas, I had to go talk to a psychiatrist before I left to
Mm.
make
Same.
sure that I was ready. Yeah.
Before every podcast, we have a little consult.
Yeah.
CIA sees it as a benefit,
Thank
a
you.
benefit professionally and a benefit organizationally to them to have people with high anxiety. Those are the people who are going to identify a risk before the risk is present.
Stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people who are going to marry the job.
Yeah.
Those are the people who will not say no when you're asked to go do something like we were asked to do for Shadow Cell.
My anxiety just got me this podcast. I think it's a work for the CIA and be a secret agent.
So you get the diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
You're now getting treatment.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
So I just did all the things that you were supposed to do. You know, I made sure I couldn't sleep. So, you know, I started taking medication for like all the GI issues that I had that were caused by the anxiety. I started trying to put weight back on. I started exercising. I
Wasn't dating.
wasn't dating. I avoided Andy like the plague for like 2 months. We worked on the same floor. And I was like, I would not go by where I thought his office was until one day we ended up in an all hands meeting. So like the whole
Couldn't
floor
avoid
was
him.
there, and I couldn't avoid him. And I thought, oh, I gotta say something, because up until then, every time I tried to write him like an "I'm sorry" email, I would want to go throw up. So there was nothing. So
That's how you know it's love.
yes, exactly.
Butterflies are next level with these two.
Yes. So at the all hands, it was so quick. I didn't have time to get anxious. So I was like, I'm really sorry. And then he was very kind to me.
He's like, I want that wounded bird.
I know.
It was quite the
She
opposite.
can't fly away. She's holding out one
So-
functioning wing.
So women's perspectives aside, let's talk about the men's perspective for a second.
Poor Andy.
Because when a girl completely avoids you in the workplace, immediately you're like, oh shit, am I going to get reported for HR? Am I about to get reported for sexual harassment because I called her and said, do you want me to pick you up? And she said no. And then I kind of pushed and I was like, do you want to just do tea or coffee? And did she see that as like an affront on? And I was like, oh shit, I'm waiting for the day that I get called in by my supervisor and handed like a letter that says you've been accused of sexual harassment. And I'm just like, oh, and especially at the time when that kind of stuff was really ill-defined and nobody knew what to expect. So for 2 months, I was terrified.
Both of you are suffering with massive amounts of anxiety. It's contagious. How do you go from that to learning not to give your coins away?
So Andy was really helpful because Andy kind of doesn't give a shit about other people. So
It's a glowing review for me today.
You should bring her on all your podcasts.
so he was really helpful in helping me heal, and you know, being somebody I could really talk to and be there for. But he also he helped me grow as a person. He was this great model for me in how to be confident in yourself and stand your ground, and you don't have to feel obligated. That was something we had a lot of conversations about because I come from a family of obligation. And it's just very traditional, right? You were obligated to do certain things as part of the family. And he was like, you don't have
Like
to do that.
suffer and be miserable.
Yeah, it's like show up to everything and be involved in everybody's conversation.
So you knew, I would guess, you knew what people expected of you before it was ever spoken.
Oh, yeah. And you would go above and beyond just in case.
Because you knew if you said no to this person, that this is going to be their reaction. And so anytime anyone is asking anything of you, you're immediately going into preventative
Jonathan,
mode.
think about what it's like when you've been at like formal family meals at my house where like the women never sit.
Yeah.
They never sit, and we serve the man first. And like that's literally it's what we're trained for. And when we're not like cooking and serving, we're cleaning up or making sure the kids are okay. Like that's what it's like. It's so funny that they have to ask. It's just like you pre-anticipate everyone's needs and anxiety. Keep
Yes.
this one away from that one. Don't serve him a second drink because he's gonna get weird, right? Like it's like all the things.
No, come on. This is not only a female condition. This is a condition of anyone who has a high level of scanning sensitivity, I had to work very hard to get my parents' expectations out of my head, especially in my early 20s and 30s, because I knew exactly what they wanted. And I knew if I said no to them, this is going to be the response, and they're going to think that I'm saying this. So I think a lot of people can relate to this. So you're growing and changing, but can you tell us a bit about the process of, do you start to then identify when the should is happening, or when you start using that anticipatory quality to act? And are you sort of, I guess, practical CBT, just
Yeah.
expanding the time between the stimulus and response?
Yeah. So I started practicing saying no more often. And in the beginning, that really looked like me saying yes and then calling back not calling back to say no. That's giving myself too much credit. But saying
Send
yes.
an email.
And then, and then sending a text with some kind of lame excuse to get out of it. That's how it started. And it was very embarrassing for me because I didn't like doing that. But over time, as I felt the benefits of having my own time and having my own life back and not having to do things that I felt obligated to do, that positive reinforcement started helping me to be like, you know what, I can't. And I would still make up these lame excuses because I still felt guilty. But over the years, I mean, it's been, I've known you
As long as you've been
17
married.
years now. Yeah. So over 17 years, I am now at a point where I can say, I don't want to do that.
And I also, I mean, I want to give Jihi credit where credit is due, but I also want to make sure that practically what she has done is she's taken a hammer instead of a scalpel. And she's momentum.
That's true.
Momentum was at the core of it all. Once she saw the benefit of saying no once or twice, she kind of got hooked. She got hooked on
There's a rush.
on the better sleep,
Yeah.
additional reading time, right? House projects that she's been putting off, and she just got hooked on it. And then all of a sudden, everybody was no. And then all of a sudden, she just stopped taking phone calls, and then she stopped checking emails, and then she was just like,
And she moved out of the house.
and
I wish.
Yeah, there's like an element of it that I would never claim is helpful or healthy that we're still working through, where I'm just kind of like, you do still have to live in the same house as the kids. Because we have had the conversation about a second apartment where she can go stay at the apartment, and the apartment can also be our office at the same time. And then I have to
I
like,
like that idea. I can come meet her for tea. She and I can have ladies' time.
No, she's going to say no. She won't answer the door when you get there.
but that's where we kind of are now. And when I have to pick between the two, for sure, I pick this 100% of the time, because she always has time for the people that she truly, truly cares about, which makes us feel really good, right? It makes the kids feel good. It makes me feel good. It makes our closest friends feel good, because they understand Jihi will make space for us, but she's not going to make space for our problems. So we've learned not to give her, Jihi's not the one you go to bitch. I'm the one you go to when you want to complain. Jihi's the one you go to when you want to have a hopeful conversation about something.
It's actually quite profound, the amount of energy you get back, and
Oh, yeah.
profound how much energy gets drained when we're in those interactions that are not fueling us.
Right. And I think right now I've gotten to a point where I have like a mental calculator of my energy for the day. Like if I wake up tired or if I wake up really energetic or whatever, like I have this mental calculator, and then I look at my day, or when people ask me to do things, I start to calculate, am I going to have enough energy at the end of the day, or am I going to burn myself? And I think that has been a really helpful tool for me along the way to not overextend. And I'm very careful not to overextend anymore.
And just to tie it to the book for just a second, this book was 4 years in the making, not because it took us so long to write it,
No.
but because CIA fought with us for 3 years about publishing this book.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I very much appreciate that you read it and that you enjoyed it, because it took so much effort to get it across the finish line, because we were fighting the U.S. government to get it published. And the reason I bring it up is because it's such a strong example of Jihi's coins. She wrote the book, she participated in the writing of the book, she submitted it like she was supposed to, and then CIA came back and said, everything you wrote is classified.
Ugh.
Wow.
And once they said that, Jihi was like, I know that's bullshit, because we took great care to make sure that nothing in here
Yeah.
violates sources or methods. And then CIA just came back with a blanket statement. Everything's classified, you cannot publish. So Jihi went into her hole, and she's like, I'm not going to participate anymore.
I don't like
CIA
conflict.
said no, and I don't want to deal with that, because I don't want to think about jail time. I don't want to think about lawsuits. I don't want to think about all this stuff. I had the opposite effect. I was like, fuck that.
Yeah.
So then I push back, I argue with them via email, I go up to CIA's headquarters, I argue with them in person, I end up hiring an attorney, and I'm like, somebody needs to look at this because I'm willing to publish this book without their approval, which will violate contractual agreements, but not, like criminal agreements, et cetera, et cetera. So he came back and she was like, I don't want you just to cause all this ruckus. So she started getting a little bit more involved and a little bit more involved. And eventually she did everything that she thought was reasonable and fair, took it to CIA, and they came back and said, no, it's classified. And then she lost it at that point. She was like, this is bullshit. And then the full force of he came into effect and she charged forward. And really, that's what got us across the
And I
finish
was like,
line.
we're going to sue you.
Her willingness to sue CIA through a cutout attorney.
Yeah.
When that news got to them, they were like, you know what?
It's not so classified
It's
anymore.
not so classified.
No, and I think this is a good kind of button, I mean, while I enjoyed the backstory, which is, kind of like, I mean, at least I have a pre-published edition where it talks about it, and from what you said, I will say it doesn't suffer, meaning I don't know what all you would have liked to include, but I have to say that I mean, it's fantastic, like in terms of the arc that you go on. And I don't feel like you're missing, meaning the story is still fleshed out enough. And I know that you had to create some fictional things. And I kept being like, I wonder where this is and I wonder what they mean. But it doesn't suffer in terms of the arc of the story that you tell. And all of the meat is there. So I'm glad that you struggled through kind of like getting it pushed through. But also whatever was removed, it's a fully fleshed out kind of experience that you take us on. So
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to my wife. Thank you for coming out of your hole in enough time to get it across the finish line. Because I would have just banged my head against a brick wall. She's the only one that knows how to actually break through that place.